Damas y caballeros.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome His Excellency Luis Abinader.
I'm not confused about Panama. We had conversations. I felt there were strong first steps. We have expectations we made clear in those conversations. I respect very much that Panama has a process. They're a democratically elected government. They have rules. They have laws. They're going to follow their process. The United States has a treaty obligation to protect the Panama Canal if it comes under attack. That treaty obligation would have to be enforced by the armed forces of the United States, particularly the U.S. Navy. I find it absurd that we would have to pay fees to transit a zone that we are obligated to protect in a time of conflict.
Rubio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Tonight we're going to be talking about Mr. Rubio, our new Secretary of State, recently on what should be considered a very important visit to one of our allies. The Secretary made a rather ambiguous statement that while the news media says that he stated that the U.S. ships were going to get free passage, I kind of interpreted it as that he felt it was absurd, as he said, that we should have to pay for that. And his reasoning was that the United States military would be required to protect the canal in case of any world tragedies or events like we've seen in the past. Mr. Rubio stated the Navy would need to go in there. And, well, if you stick a Navy ship inside the canal, to me it's a sitting duck. I think it would be more like the U.S. military, the Marine Corps, possibly the Navy SEALs, which is what happened the last time. But I'll get into that a little bit farther on. Mr. Rubio stated that we were responsible for protecting it and could be called upon to do it. As of this moment in time that I'm recording this, the U.S. has had a presence there. The U.S. has invaded Panama one time, and that was when we took it back from the dictator, Noriega, and we handed it over to Panama. That's the only time that military of any country has ever invaded Panama. The Germans haven't done it, the Japanese haven't done it, the Russians haven't done it, the Chinese haven't done it. There have been thoughts in the past. The Japanese thought about it during World War II, but that's a long ways from Japan, even with a carrier, to try and get to Panama to do any damage, so that plan was scrapped. The Germans did park a couple of U-boats out off of one of the sides, and I believe it was the Pacific, but never attempted to attack it. I think they felt better for what their process was going to be. As I said, the only military that's ever invaded Panama, that Panama ever needed protection from, was the United States, and they were the ones asking us to be there, but it was for Noriega, not for the canal. So here's a clip I want you to listen to. It's from the President, Jose Raul Molino, refuting our Secretary of State's comment that he had agreed to free passage. And again, this is not something that, you should get wrong on the first meeting with someone, especially first meeting, first time at the job. If you can't get these kinds of facts straight, what facts can you get straight? But I digress. Here's the President of Panama.
No me gustó, pero me apena decir que tengo que rechazar ese comunicado del Departamento de Estado, porque está basado sobre una falsedad, y así, por lo menos en mi librito, no se manejan las relaciones bilaterales de dos países amigos y socios a través de la historia. Ni el gobierno ni la autoridad podrán exonerar del pago de peajes, derechos o tasas por la prestación de los servicios del canal. Esa es una limitante constitucional.
He was very clear that it would be a constitutional change that would have to be made. The Canal Authority and the Panamanian Constitution don't allow for such things to happen. I wonder how Mr. Rubio got the point that they were going to be allowed, that he would make the statement that they would be allowed, and then had to kind of walk it back very embarrassingly. That seems to be a trademark. The current administration's cabinet, they're forever making statements and then having to walk them back. It makes them look foolish even when they're not trying to be. I have no bone to pick with Marco Rubio. I think Marco has been an incredibly strong, straightforward politician. I question his credibility now that he's hooked his wagon to the administration of this 47th president. But I digress. That's going to be for him to prove, and I'm not going to call him out. Like I said, I have no problem with him. He's out trying to do a difficult job for a difficult taskmaster and being asked to perform the impossible with little or nothing. So I had mentioned earlier that there were times when the Panama Canal came under attack. And when I looked these up, I was looking for specifics, and I had used the word attack to do my digging. And I found that no one, although like I say, then the U.S., and I don't want to be repetitive, but the U.S. invaded Panama. The canal has never been attacked, okay? There have been attempts. There have been half-hearted attempts. There have been attempts that were caught long before they even got to fruition. But there's 5 major events that have happened at the Panama Canal, and I want to get my facts straight, so I'm going to read here from my notes that during World War I, between 1914 and 1918, the Germans had a plan to sabotage the canal. The problem being is that the U.S. and Allies intelligence caught wind of that and managed to keep that from happening, managed to keep the canal safe, okay? There was no attack, but yes, there was an effort by the United States. But remember, 1918, it's an important date. World War II was the second time, and it was the one where I referred to the Japanese and the Germans making a threat, 1930-1945. The Japanese wanted to put a couple of suicide bombers, which they were famous for, their kamikaze pilots, onto a carrier and get over to Panama, but the cost of that venture was far more than what apparently the Japanese military leaders felt was the target wasn't worth that much. So they didn't go. And again, the Germans parked a couple of U-boats out there looking around, never really got around to doing it, never got into the canal. You know, trying to walk a sub into that area, if you're familiar with the canal, and I'm only familiar with it through maps and through reading and stuff that I've done throughout the years and when I was in high school studying it. But there's a large isthmus on either side of the canal that allows for hundreds of very large cargo ships, the Panamanian class, the Panamax class ships, to get in there and park while they await their schedule. And yeah, you could slide a boat in there, a U-boat, but yeah, try and get out now because everybody knows you're there. It may not be a successful deal and it will look more like suicide. So the Germans never attempted it. Now, the next one, 1956 to 1970 was when the U.S. finally went in. There was tension in there, but it was between the United States and the government. It wasn't until 1989 that the Navy SEALs actually invaded Panama in that now famous news clip where the reporters had already gotten word where the Navy SEALs were going to come up, and they were on the beach with cameras and lights and blew the entire gig for the U.S. Navy SEALs. Yeah, that looked like something out of a movie gone wrong. But they successfully took out Noriega. They successfully returned the Panamanian government to a pro-democratic control, and on they went. So far, just to keep the numbers straight, 1918, 1945, 1970, 1989, and then what's now called the post-9/11 era, which goes from 2001 to present. There's counterterrorism and cybersecurity that's done in the area, the same as it's done everywhere else in the world, the same as it's done everywhere inside the United States, okay? So it's not like there's a lot of extra effort going out there. There's not troops out there, boots on the ground, holding a gun, guarding posts and watching over for the bad guys to come screaming in. That's not happening. So when Marco Rubio says that we're tasked with the protection of it, yeah, there never really was boots on the ground except for the 1989 when we invaded the Panama. So Rubio's statement that we're paying for something that we have to protect. Well, we protect it every 2 or 3 decades. And in the meantime, we put a lot of ships through there at a cost of approximately, if I saw the numbers right, it was approximately $25 million for the U.S. military to be able to transit the canal. 25 million sounds like a big number, but when you break it down to military costs, which the black budget from the U.S. Pentagon is in the hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, 25 million is a joke. Why are we chasing $25 million when we've got better things to be doing? Okay, 25 million. I think they spend that on coffee inside the Pentagon annually, but I digress. One of the other things that Marco Rubio made a statement to, and it was, in my estimation, very misleading. And again, I'm not a guy that's out here to bash Rubio, but he made a comment that the Chinese have control of the ports at either end. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's something I completely missed, and I really needed to get caught up on that. So I did a lot of digging over the last 3 or 4 hours, and I found out that the Chinese have 2 port authorities, very much like every major city has a port authority, like Miami has a port authority, Galveston, Texas has a port authority, Louisiana has a port authority. They have ports, commercial ports that are there for commercial reasons, and they have docks, and they have cranes, and they have boats that pull in. They in no way control any of the canal, none. They pay the same fees that we do for all of our Panamax class and smaller boats. They pay the same fee. They just happen to have a dock in the area, the same as we do. They do not have control over any of the ship movements, the locks, or the access to the canal. They merely have a presence, which I'm going to go back to what I've been saying a long time now. The Chinese are there for a reason. The Chinese have offered a financial work in the area. They've offered financial trade. They've built a bridge. They've built roads. They've made major financial investments in Panama. And they're doing it the same way the United States used to do it. But we don't do it anymore. During the administration and now in the 47th, we are alienating all those people and telling them that we don't need them. It's America first. Clue, we do need them. It's not America first. If every game you play, you have to win, whether that's in a game of cards, whether that's in a game of baseball, whether that's in a game of pool, any game, you're going to do that a couple of times and then nobody else is going to want to play. And they're going to go look for somebody else to play with. And in this case, it's been the Chinese because they've got the financial wherewithal to be in different parts of the world, and it behooves them to increase their financial status in the world. You don't want to see people being alienated and being pushed farther towards the Chinese. I keep saying that. Number 47, I doubt you're listening to me, but if anybody that has a piece of his ear that thinks that they can get a thought into his head, you can't win every game. Otherwise, people no longer want to play. That's about it. It's not a lot that I had to say about it, but, you know, Mr. Rubio has damaged and soiled and sullied his reputation with the comments that he's making, and then the backing up of the facts, and then for him to say that, you know, we should get through free because we put effort into protecting it. Yeah, but it's not a real big effort. And then to say that the Chinese control the ports at either end, it's a downright lie. It's not just a misleading statement. It's a downright lie. They have port authorities just like everybody else does, just like we do, just like every other country. You look far enough, I bet you can find a Russian port there also. But I digress. Anyways, the Panamanians are in control of it. They're not going to give it up. It's their stock and trade. It's their money cow. Who's going to give up their money cow, especially with such a small country with such a small set of resources? We built it. We gave it to them because we didn't want to maintain it. They took it. They improved it. And now it's their economic base. Leave them alone. Anyways, folks, that's all I've got for you tonight. I got a lot of responses to last night's satirical edition. Yes, I'll give you more. I didn't think I was going to get that many requests, but I enjoyed it. I actually saw people looking at it at my coffee shop today that didn't know I was sitting there. So anyways, all I can say right now is that I really do appreciate all my subscribers, and I do appreciate everyone's comments, whether you're from the red side, the blue side, or the middle side that doesn't have a color. Please feel free. I'm willing to talk to anybody. Like I said, I've got a couple of really good people that are talking to me that are carrying on discourse, and one of them, we don't have anything in common at all. He's on one side, I'm on the other side, basically. But we're still having fun with it. That's what life's about, people. Stop and smile. Take a deep breath. Tomorrow is going to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Have an awesome night.